Hello friends. After the barley tests in ancient Egypt, today we move to a completely different corner of the world. The life of pregnancy, full of taboos and rituals in traditional China. My life, when I became pregnant as a lady, was filled with the obligation to follow hundreds of rules. I was forbidden to sit on my bed, wear bright colors, or even eat delicious things. You will be astonished when you learn about the bizarre Tai Jiao rituals I practiced to protect my baby's fate. If you're ready, let's get into the video. But first, remember, don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss future historical lives. Pregnancy in traditional China was the most heavily regulated period in a woman's life, and these rules would seem entirely bizarre to a modern person. The most important was respecting the concept of the bed god Trung Shen. It was strictly forbidden to sit carelessly on my bed or even dangle my feet off the side, as I might anger the bed god and harm my baby's soul. This rule encouraged pregnant women to avoid excessive movement and to regard their bed more like a shrine than just a place for rest. Furthermore, I was forbidden to wear bright-colored clothes or use strikingly patterned fabrics. Everything had to be in simple and soft colors. This was to keep the baby's attention away from the outside world and protect its soul. My life hung in balance on a thin thread of these taboos and rituals, spent in constant fear of doing something wrong. Tai Jiao prenatal education, a doctrine believed to determine a man's destiny, played a central role in my life. This was not just a physiological process, but also a philosophical practice that shaped the baby's character in the womb. I was forbidden from looking at ugly or ill-tempered people, listening to bad words, or even eating food cut crookedly, as all these could negatively affect my baby's mental and moral development. Every day, I would only read classic poems about moral virtues and only look at beautiful landscapes. My life had transformed into a period of complete meditation and discipline. My baby's future as a scholar or a high-ranking official depended on this discipline. This discipline was not just spiritual, but also a physical act. The more orderly and serene my body was, the purer my baby's soul would be. As the moment of birth approached, I would be very careful even when moving from one place to another inside the house. Especially, carrying a sharp metal object, usually a knife, was mandatory when moving to the room where the birth would take place, usually the least sunny, least visible corner of the house. This knife served as an amulet to protect the mother and baby from nearby evil spirits and ghosts during childbirth. Although this ritual with a knife would be completely bizarre for a modern midwife, every birth at that time was seen as a battle between good and evil spirits. My life, in this critical period, was a constant struggle, not only against physical difficulty, but also against invisible threats. The birth itself disrupted the normal flow of the house, so I would enter this room secretly and quietly. This was a way to minimize spiritual danger. The first month after childbirth, the yuezi, sitting the month period, was the strictest and most important period in a Chinese mother's life. During this period, it was mandatory for the mother to be completely isolated from the outside world, not to take a bath, not to wash her hair, and not to drink cold water. The purpose of these rules was to protect the body from cold and wind, as according to Chinese medicine, cold and wind would cause future diseases and infertility. Although this seems incredible by modern hygiene standards, these strict rules ensured the mother's protection from infections and physical fatigue. My life during this month was spent entirely behind closed doors, nourished only by hot soups and herbs. I couldn't even imagine how a modern woman would endure this quarantine, but it was a health investment for the rest of my life. Immediately after the baby's birth, rituals would begin to shape its future character. Items representing the qualities the parents wished to see in the baby would be placed next to the baby's bed. For example, an inkstone and brush would represent scholarship, a sword would represent the warrior spirit, or a gold coin would represent wealth. This was the continuation of the Tai Jiao philosophy after birth. These items would create an energy field that would help the baby develop these qualities in its dreams and subconscious mind. My life was filled with the belief that my child's destiny could be controlled down to the smallest detail. This was similar to a modern parent's effort to send their child to the best schools. But our method was more spiritual. My child achieving a high position would mean honor not just for them, but for my entire family. Looking into a mirror during pregnancy was a great taboo for a Chinese woman. According to traditional belief, mirrors served as a gateway for evil spirits, and when a pregnant woman looked into a mirror, evil spirits could pass through the mirror and steal the baby's soul. This was a rule that made a modern woman stay away from caring about her appearance, but its real purpose was to protect the baby. My life during this period required all mirrors in the house to be covered or removed. This meant completely isolating myself from the outside world. This taboo also encouraged avoiding focusing on the physical changes brought by pregnancy and transitioning into a more introverted, spiritual state. The mirror prohibition forced me to focus on inner beauty and spiritual power, which was a reflection of the aesthetic understanding of that era. During the first month after birth, yuezi, the mother's diet was extremely strict, and its sole purpose was to warm the body. Cold foods, raw vegetables, and even some fruits were forbidden, as it was believed that they would cool the body and deplete energy ki. My diet consisted only of boiled eggs, hot rice, porridge, and special bone broth soups prepared especially with ginger, sesame oil, and rice wine. These soups were thought to accelerate blood circulation and warm the body, enabling the mother to recover quickly. My life was completely deprived of sweet and delicious foods during this month, but this disciplined diet was the guarantee of my future health. According to Chinese medicine, the blood and energy ki lost during childbirth would be regained with these hot foods. This was a completely recovery-focused detox that even modern nutritional science could not deny. Chinese astrology and the calendar played a critical role in determining the moment of birth and the baby's future character. The animal sign of the year the baby was born, dragon, tiger, monkey, etc., and the hour of birth would predict its future social status and personality. Therefore, some families would try to manipulate the birth date to have their child born under an auspicious sign, which was quite difficult in an era without cesarean sections. My life was filled with the belief that every detail that could affect my baby's character was even determined by the stars. This was not just a calendar, but also a map of destiny. Every birth was seen as a cosmic event. Choosing the correct birth date for my child was the first and most important step to increasing the family's luck and reputation. This was one of the biggest stress factors in my life. Before birth, it was mandatory to clean and organize everything in the house to facilitate the baby's arrival and gather good energy. In particular, old or unused items and old clothes had to be removed from the house, as it was believed that they carried bad ki energy. During my pregnancy, our house had to constantly have a new and clean energy flow. This was similar to a modern mother's nesting instinct, but its purpose was entirely spiritual. My life was spent eliminating unnecessary clutter and providing the purest environment for my baby. This was the strictest application of feng shui principles during pregnancy. This cleansing was not just a physical act, but also a ritual to purify the mother's mind and soul from bad thoughts. If a woman gave birth to twins, This situation was often seen as a great sign of bad luck and confusion. In traditional Chinese culture, two souls being born in one body or at the same time was considered contrary to the order of nature. Therefore, families who gave birth to twins often had to hide one of their children or perform special rituals to change their destiny. Although this belief is incredibly cruel for a modern parent, it was believed at that time that everything should be in balance and order. My life was filled with the social stigma and fear brought by such abnormal situations. This showed us how societal norms took precedence over individual happiness. Hiding one twin was seen as the only way to ensure the other child had a normal destiny. The moment the mother and baby would go outside for the first time after birth was celebrated with a special ritual called the third-day bath. This was a ceremony performed to cleanse the baby's body and officially welcome it to the world. The baby would usually be bathed in a lucky bath with warm water mixed with red eggshells, ginger, and mint leaves. The purpose of this ritual was to make the baby's future skin smooth and to ward off evil spirits. My life, after this bath, would be partially freed from the strict isolation of yuezi, and I would return to the community with my baby. This was similar to a modern welcome baby party, but ritual-focused. This bath was also a purification ritual that allowed the mother to feel cleansed and reborn. Chinese parents would perform a ritual called juazhou, the grab, shortly after birth to predict the baby's future profession or inclination. In this ritual, a series of objects, money, book, needle, scissors, food would be placed in front of the baby, and it would be observed which one the baby would grab first. If the baby grabbed a book, it was believed that they would be a scholar. If they grabbed money, they would be a wealthy merchant. My life was spent eagerly waiting for my child to choose in this ritual. This was a kind of early destiny test. This tradition showed the deep hopes and expectations parents had for their children's future. This ritual was a turning point that determined the child's future social status, and everyone's eyes were on the baby's small hand. During pregnancy, having strong and positive thoughts was as important as physical health. According to Chinese medicine, the mother's emotional state directly affected the baby's key vital energy flow. Therefore, my life as a pregnant woman constantly required me to be calm, cheerful, and harmonious. Arguing loudly, getting angry, or feeling excessive sadness was strictly forbidden, as this could negatively affect the baby's organ development. My life during this period was an art of emotional balance. I tried to spend every moment in meditative peace, which was similar to a modern woman taking stress management classes, but the pressure was much greater. I lived with the belief that even the slightest anger could cause the baby to be born with a birthmark. Immediately after birth, one of the most bizarre rituals to protect the baby from evil spirits was placing pieces of charcoal and ginger near the baby. Charcoal would ward off bad energy with its fire and warmth, and ginger with its sharp smell. These objects would be placed under the baby's bed or on the door threshold. This is similar to a modern parent placing a camera or sensor next to the crib, but the protection was entirely spiritual. My life was filled with such small, constantly repeated protection rituals. This showed us how precious and, at the same time, how vulnerable every newborn life was considered in China. The dark color of the charcoal would help hide the baby's bright energy, which was thought to attract evil spirits. During pregnancy, special paintings and objects that would influence the baby's gender and future character would be hung in the mother's room. For example, if a boy was desired, paintings of tigers or dragons would be hung. This would ensure the baby would be strong and ambitious. If a girl was desired, fertility symbols like peach blossoms or pomegranates would be used. These visuals were an extension of the Tai Jiao philosophy. My life was constantly surrounded by these powerful and symbolic images. Every glance was an opportunity to transfer these virtues to my baby's soul. This was similar to a modern mother decorating her baby's room for didactic purposes, but the effect was much deeper. Arranging the room was seen as the first step toward my child's future success. If a woman had a stillbirth or miscarriage during pregnancy, this was a source of shame, and it was believed that the woman carried bad ki. These losses were usually seen as a result of the woman not adequately following the prenatal taboo rules or angering her ancestors. This added a societal stigma to the already devastating emotional pain. When such losses occurred, numerous cleansing and purification rituals would be performed to ward off evil spirits and conceive again. My life would be spent under the spiritual and social pressure brought by such losses. This showed me that, as in Egypt, a mother's success was directly linked to her child's survival. I would have to perform purification rituals that lasted for months to be able to get pregnant again. The prohibition against washing the mother's hair during the postpartum period, yuezi, stemmed from the belief of protecting the body from cold. Washing the hair would lower the body temperature and cause future headaches and rheumatism. Therefore, mothers had to live with incredibly dirty hair during this 1-month period. This was a lack of hygiene that a modern woman would not tolerate. My life, during this month when I had to keep myself warm even with this dirty and itchy hair, required me to focus on health rather than aesthetics. However, this rule was also a simple method that ensured the mother rested completely and focused her energy only on the baby. I would eagerly await the end of yuezi just so I could bathe. Chinese midwives would usually use acupressure, pressure points, and herbal medicines to facilitate childbirth. During labor, the midwife, applying pressure to certain points with her fingers, would ease the pains and help the baby move into the correct position. This was based on thousands of years of medical knowledge, which was the ancestor of modern acupuncture. Additionally, special herbal teas would be prepared to increase or decrease labor pains. My life was surrendered with complete trust to these practical and natural medical methods. This was more a belief in the wisdom of nature and the body than a spiritual surrender, as in Egypt. The midwife would ask me to press my hand onto a birth pillow when my pains increased. This was a way to transfer the pain onto the pillow. After birth, when the umbilical cord was cut, the remaining part of the cord and the placenta would be disposed of with a great ritual. Traditionally, the placenta was viewed with special respect because it carried the baby's first life energy key. The placenta would usually be buried under a newly planted tree or under the foundation of the house. This was done with the wish that the baby would take root, have a long life, and establish a strong connection with the earth. This ritual instilled a deep spiritual meaning in a part that modern medicine only sees as biological waste. My life, with such deeply meaningful ceremonies, showed that a mother not only gives birth to a child, but also strengthens her connection with her family and the land. This ceremony was vital for the child's future health and luck. Another bizarre practice in traditional China to secure the child's future health was the ritual of temporarily selling them to another family's house. If a child was constantly ill or their stars seemed inauspicious, the parents would temporarily sell the child only on paper and ritually to a rich, successful, and lucky family. This was to deceive evil spirits and ensure that the child's bad fate would be transferred to the lucky new family. My life would require allowing another family to borrow my child to protect its destiny. This was an act of deep desperation and belief that a modern parent could not understand. Making this sacrifice to change the child's destiny showed the greatest anxiety and love a mother could feel. That's it. My life as a pregnant woman in traditional China was spent with the strict discipline of Taijiao, the prohibition against sitting on the bed, and the challenging 1-month isolation of yuezi. This was a much more difficult and rules-bound process than a modern mother could imagine. If you enjoyed this journey through weird history, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the future stories of my life, perhaps the pregnancy traditions of the Incas.